Welcome. Step into the Mindora Lab. On this podcast, we will be discussing the practices, research, science, and technology surrounding alternative medicine, where listeners will gain valuable insight and information with every episode. Just as a reminder, the Mindora Lab podcast is for educational and informational purposes solely. All subjects discussed on this podcast should not be construed as medical or legal advice. You should always seek out help from a professional provider. Thank you. Hello everyone. Today I am speaking with CO2 Meter based out of Florida. I'm speaking with Morgan Morris and Josh Pringle on the Mindora Lab podcast. How are we doing today, guys?
Hey, Dorian, we're doing great. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for making us part of the story, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. First off, just to break it to the audience, I did an interview with CO2 Meter while I was working at a manufacturing facility in Florida, and they were so awesome. Everything was super professional, and the equipment that they provide for facilities is super easy to use, and it's very intuitive. So your operation could use something of the sort if you're looking to monitor certain gaseous compounds in your facility. So to jump in, I just want to hear about,
Wait
Josh.
a minute, Dorian. I got to thank you for the plug. That was nice of you to do that for us. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So, like to jump into it, I want to hear more about, Josh and Morgan. Specifically, where did you guys grow up? What would you study in college?
Morgan, are you going to lead off?
Sure. It's funny because ironically, Josh and I are actually from the same area in Northern Virginia, and we both ended up in Florida together.
Wow.
But I'm from Northern Virginia. I graduated with a business degree from George Mason University. The college was also rivals with Josh's, so we're always poking fun at each other there. But my background is not in science. It's in business and marketing, but I will tell you, I've always had a keen curiosity and interest in all things tech and science. So I've
Mhm.
worked in a lot of different software companies as a government contractor and now with CO2 Meter. So I think tech has always followed me paired with science, and it's always changing, which I think keeps things fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, Dorian, I tell people all the time I have no idea why I'm good at talking about gas detection and analysis. I am, I guess. After 10 years, I better be able to say that I am.
Right.
But Morgan mentioned it. I spent almost 17 years of my life in Virginia. Some of that at James Madison University. I got a Bachelor of Science degree there, not in actual science. It was in political science.
Okay.
But for me, I am the youngest of three sons of two teachers,
Mm,
and for me, it's sort of a lifelong learning process, experience, journey, I guess, if you want to call it. They instilled in all three of us the need to try and learn something new, if not every day, every week. And I get that opportunity here because we get folks calling and saying, "Hey, I've never done this before, seen this before. Hey, have you ever done this? Or could you make a device do that?" And we love that because it makes our brains activated. Sure, we could sell standard monitors all day long, but it's that opportunity to work with a university student or somebody working on a new incubator project, or hey, I'm building a new restaurant out. Um, those are the opportunities we love because it helps us expand our brains a little bit, but
mm.
it also gives us the background to have future conversations with customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you pair up with people that are looking to build out projects and make sure that their facility is safe for employees to come in and operate. So, how did you both get involved with CO2 meter?
I was working on some of my own side projects, Dorian, after a career in Northern Virginia at some tech firms and I was in procurement for Costco for 10 years.
Mm.
Um, I got approached by the original owners to do some sales and marketing projects, if you will, as sort of a contractor. And I wrapped those projects up pretty quickly and put a nice neat little bow on it. And they wanted me to come on board full time. And that was um, that was just a little over 10 years ago now. And then about 4 years into it, we decided as a business that we actually needed someone that knew things about marketing, not someone who just thought they did. And I put a requisition out to hire somebody to handle all of our marketing, and her name's Morgan Morris.
Oh, here we go.
Here I am, 6 years later, and I still would not have it any other way. So
Did you think you were gonna land in a company that was doing something with a scientific approach?
Not exactly. Like I mentioned, I was from a tech background. I worked for an analytical company back in Northern Virginia, and there's definitely tech involved with gas detection solutions. So I was automatically intrigued and just intrigued by the solutions that we can provide and how it helps others. I think that's a big thing. It's super rewarding to hear those actual customer success stories of those folks out in the field and how our devices have saved lives and helped and protected them. So I think that's a big part of it too.
So please expand on who are your customers primarily?
Yeah, so I think what makes our solutions so unique is that we really integrate into so many different applications. And I think people are always intrigued when they realize that, there's so many different uses for gas. Currently, we have, over 250 different devices that are used across the globe. So a specific customer, it really could include a partner, it could include a gas distributor, or even a supplier that is involved in something like restaurants, beverage, indoor agriculture, pharmaceutical, even welding, just to name a few. So
Mhm.
if they're using gas, most likely they could use a solution to sense that gas, whether it's for safety or analysis or even control. So every day is really different, and it's nice to be able to provide such a range too of gas solutions that can fit just a large variety of customers' needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with being able to monitor gaseous levels throughout facilities is important when you're dealing with even toxic gas because you don't ever want to have any detectable levels above the acceptable ppm in the air, right? So it's a big part of making sure facilities are safe and understanding what levels are acceptable and what are not, so that you ever have an audit come in, you're not caught with your pants down, right?
Yeah, Dorian, it's funny. I was with a customer yesterday. They asked me a question. They said, "Hey, could you measure hexavalent chromium?" And not knowing what hexavalent chromium is, my
Hmm.
first question back to them was, "Well, what's the customer doing with hexavalent chromium?" And it's actually an off gassing in welding. Some welding applications they use it for tanning of like leathers and those types of products. So,
Hmm.
do we have something to measure hexavalent chromium today? No, but the fact that they asked means that I can come back and do some research on the gas itself, what's its byproducts, what does OSHA look at for hexavalent chromium. Morgan and I can talk about what that market looks like. Is there a place in the market for us? Is it a big enough market to go after? Then we can engage the engineering team if we wanted to say, we see this market opportunity. Could we go after this? Do we have the experience to go after this? How would we do it? And then if we decide to do it, a year later, 18 months later, we could have a product for that. So that's one of the things that I think excites me the most is when, we talked about earlier, learning something new every day. It's also the ability that we have a team that if we see a business opportunity, it makes sense, that we can actually put something together and go after that. And that takes a lot of different pieces all moving together to make that happen. But that's one of the
Right.
things that makes CO2 Meter unique. We we have competitors in specific applications or spaces where they're essentially one trick ponies. We're
Hmm.
able to dive into a lot of these new markets and new applications, build new devices, bring new technology to bear, and then take that technology and say, could we make existing devices in our existing applications better? So I think Morgan and I agree on this. It's sort of one of the pillars of our business is using new applications and new technology to improve our product line for our customers across the board. That's one of the things that really makes CO2 meters stand out.
Interesting. So, can you explain a little bit of how your most popular sensors work?
So I'm going to talk about two different gases, Dorian. So let's be
Hmm.
specific. Obviously, the name of the company is CO2 Meter. So let's talk about that one first. We are talking about using non-dispersive infrared to measure the gas. So essentially, we're using light to look at and measure the CO2 molecules because we know exactly what light spectrum that molecule sits in. Nothing
Okay.
else really sits in that light spectrum.
Right.
So we're actually able, with the non-dispersive infrared sensor, to actually essentially count the molecule. We're able to do it very quickly, very precisely. When I say quickly, we've got sensors that measure 50 or 60 times a second.
Wow.
Our standard sensors are, once every second or once every 2 to 5 seconds. We've got sensors that measure across the entire range for CO2 as well. So we have some sensors that are very accurate, repeatable, very tight resolution down in the sub 1%, sub 10,000
Hmm.
ppm. And we have some that are really great at measuring at the top end at close to or at 100%. That gives us the
Wow.
ability to get into all these different applications, measure precisely, accurately, and quickly. On the oxygen side, so let me talk about measuring oxygen. There's a couple different ways to do it. One of them is with light. One of them is an oxygen quenching sensor. Essentially,
Hmm.
we're talking about similar technology, but in this case, we're measuring either the increase or decrease in oxygen concentration. Most
Okay.
applications, we're measuring oxygen because there's another gas present that's either difficult or costly to try and measure. So let's think of something that's pretty generic, which is nitrogen. In
Right.
the presence of stored nitrogen or created nitrogen, we're going to measure the lack of oxygen. And it's for two reasons. One is it's very difficult to measure nitrogen accurately. We actually would need a mass spectrometer to do it. The second
Mm.
reason is, sorry, there's actually three. The second reason is there's so much nitrogen in our normal atmosphere. 78% of the Earth's atmosphere is nitrogen. To detect a
Right.
change in nitrogen concentration, you'd need a lot of nitrogen to do that. There'd be so much
Hmm.
nitrogen that we'd move the oxygen number quickly. So it makes more sense to measure oxygen. And then the last reason, and it doesn't matter whether it's nitrogen, argon, or helium, anything like that, we're measuring oxygen because it's not a one-to-one relationship. So think of a jar or a room. Every time I push a molecule of nitrogen into that room or jar, I'm not necessarily driving out oxygen. I could be driving out one of the other gases first. So let's
Right.
measure the oxygen concentration as it falls or rises in case you actually have stored oxygen. It's a quicker, better, faster, more reliable way to measure for those other inert gases.
Oh, that's amazing. No, I didn't know about the oxygen side of the sensors. I knew the CO2 meters and sensors were your primary uh, product that you would sell to facilities and companies, but I didn't know about the oxygen
Yeah,
sensors. So that's
the oxygen
awesome.
piece is actually a quickly growing side of our business. We Morgan and her marketing team put a lot of focus on the oxygen monitoring side because there are so many applications where the oxygen deficiency or oxygen enrichment is really the only option to measure for safety. So whether it's cold storage or food production, packaging, or storage, cryogenics. There are a lot of applications where the only option is to measure for oxygen efficiency or oxygen enrichment.
So Morgan, you touch base on that. Which customers are primarily looking for this application for detecting oxygen levels?
Yeah, I think Josh kind of hit it on the head there. It's definitely going to be those folks that are in food production facilities, those that are working in really low and cold environments like cold storage and cryogenics, pharmaceutical, more the scientific and medical side, which is constantly evolving. So it's really being able to push us into new markets and expand our product offering. So we're really excited about that.
That's awesome. Josh, what are the dangers of excessive CO2 in manufacturing facilities?
Yeah, it's not. Well, let me start with this, Dorian. It's not just manufacturing. I mean, we're talking about, the basic one that everybody can sort of best relate to is, you go out to eat at your standard quick serve or fast serve restaurant, whether it's Chipotle or
Hmm.
Panda Express, Cracker Barrel, Wendy's, Buffalo Wild Wings, whatever it is. If they've got dispensed soda or draft beer, they've got a CO2 system. And to make that
Right.
CO2 system function, they likely have a bulk tank, what looks like a hot water heater in their back room that stores CO2 in a liquid format. That allows them to put soda bubbles in soda and beer essentially. But if that leaks, same as an agricultural facility or a packaging facility or a laboratory, if it leaks, we really have the opportunity there to either injure someone severely or potentially cause a fatality. So, a
Hmm.
CO2 monitor in those cases is a very simple, cost effective way to ensure that doesn't happen. Now, we're very fortunate in our business that there are some regulations that require those. Uh, we don't lean on the regulation, we lean on education and educating the customer about the necessity for it. So yeah, there are requirements for it, but really at the end of the day, Dorian, if you own a business or manage a business and you say that your employees are your most valuable asset, and taking
Hmm.
those simple cost effective steps to ensure their safety, we think is a pretty simple equation to ensure that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're, on the same page with thinking in terms of your employees as your most valuable asset. And if you have something that's cost effective installed in your business that's monitoring the safety of your employees, I mean, that's a no brainer. And luckily, we live in a country that has regulations that's being able to monitor this and make sure that companies are being upheld to a standard. And working in multiple facilities that was using carbon dioxide in liquid form, passing that through a series of pressurized chambers, you're always thinking about where the next leak is going to be and how can you make sure that it's being detected before it gets to a critical point where now you have to make adjustments and quick second decisions to ensure that everyone is safe in the facility. And I've already encountered those several times in my career as working in cannabis and working in nutraceuticals. I think that's why I gravitated towards having this conversation with CO2 Meter even after the interview down in Florida. It makes a lot of sense that someone would make a simple investment in these sensors and have their own monitoring system set up. So, can you expand more on the remote capabilities that companies are going to have soon with detecting CO2 meters?
Yeah, so there's the system that you have used, Dorian, from us, um, will here early in Q1 of 2024 will have the capability to push that data off to the cloud or through a unique application on your phone. It will
Mhm.
be, it will be read only. It will have no control functions. We certainly don't want someone thinking they're playing a prank on their friends and changing alarm levels and settings while they're on the couch at home. So, just a view only function, but it's unique that it will allow, whether it's a business owner or a general manager, an environmental health and safety person, the on-call person for the weekend, whatever that business determines or whoever that business determines needs that information, will be able to see it real time, either through the AWS data or on their phone. We think, based off of information that we've gotten through visits with existing customers, as well as some information that Morgan and the marketing team have collected, our customer base thinks that this is the best next step for them in the advent of safety monitoring for CO2 and O2, because
Right.
it gives them that additional set of knowledge or that additional knowledge base.
Yeah, and I mean that even goes even deeper with having that data available, right? Because if you're able to understand if there are leaks in your system throughout the year, you can detect how much money that you're losing and loss of carbon dioxide if it is a solvent for your manufacturing facility, or even just understanding the levels of CO2 that you're going to have to monitor in terms of just making sure your employees are safe.
I think not just that, Dorian. I know Josh mentioned it earlier. We're not just here to provide our customers with a safety solution. Obviously, that is integral and they need to have it in order to protect their employees and their staff or their facilities. But it's also further being educated on the
Mm,
hazards at hand. And I think that is something that differentiates us. We provide standard operating procedures and training alongside our solutions so that those customers not only know how to operate the device, but they're able to know, at what levels do I need to evacuate and how can I really mitigate these risks from occurring, every day to day when they're dealing with these gases. So I think the wireless capabilities will be a definite benefit and further the education that goes with it on what to do should an incident occur.
yeah, and to tailor off of that, I loved reading your standard operating procedure. It was very thorough, super meticulous, and it was very easy to digest and understand so that any person could pick it up and recognize the color coding system that you have in place, where it's a no-brainer that you can pick it up and just hand it to someone else for training and be able to understand completely how to look at the system and understand what's happening on a hour to hour basis.
Yeah, Dorian, I think, let me dovetail off of that just a little bit. I think, and maybe it's me, some of the direction I've put behind things here in 10 years. I know Morgan and I, the sales team, engineering, we're all on the same page on this. We don't have an agenda here. We're a business. We're not a charity. We sell monitors and analytical equipment. So let's take that off the table. Um, at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, we feel that if we are honest, we do business above the table, above board, we work from a position of integrity, we share that information and education, we provide those necessary needs or to dos to customers like we did with you. We feel like
Mhm.
at the end of the day that if we provide someone all that information and do it from a position of credibility, that one, they get to make their own decision. They're not pushed an agenda. They are not told what they should be doing. They are not beat over the head with codes and regulations. They get to make their own good decisions. And the next step is we feel like when that happens, we win the vast majority of the time. We think that's also something that sets CO2 meter and us as employees of CO2 meter, that sets us very much apart from other people in these fields and competition. We feel like that's very unique for us.
Love that. I love all of that because it is. I could tell that you guys are coming from a place of integrity and being honest and upfront. Just by the moment I met y'all. So in terms of other companies that you work with, are you involved with any cannabis companies on the East Coast or
Yeah,
internationally?
we have a pretty significant network of partners and customers within the cannabis world, whether they are, you know, no matter what side of the business they're on.
Mm-hmm.
We think, well, not we think, I can tell you, we are told that we're one of those go tos for safety devices in the cannabis space. We feel like we've earned that good reputation. One, based off of great products, so quality devices, they work out of the box. Two, the level of support and service that we provide if customers have questions, we're here to take care of that. Three, that educational component up front. And then four, at the end of the day, we're not there to beat people over the head. If you want to, give us a shout out on Instagram or like something that Morgan and the team put up on YouTube, we love that support, but we're not grasping for that. We're not reaching for that. We want it to happen organically. So yes, lots of the small folks and big folks are using
Mm-hmm.
CO2 meter devices, whether they're doing enrichment or extraction. We're not only do we already support them, we're happy to support a lot of their growth projects now too. So that's the other thing is it's a testimony to the business and the products that someone does an initial 10,000 square foot facility with 10 rooms and comes back to us when they've got the next 80,000 square foot facility, and then they're doing a 250,000 square foot facility, and then they're doing a facility in another state that requires different things or regulations. So they're coming back to us because we've done the right thing for them. We've provided great products, but they also know that we're going to help them work through those little quirks and changes that happen from different facilities in different jurisdictions.
Yeah, and I think you're about to have an explosion of cannabis companies in Florida because the initiative was just put on the ballot and actually passed. You guys had enough signatures for recreational use to go on the ballot next year. So you could be popping off with a ton of different MSOs that are traveling to
Well,
Florida.
Dorian, I'm going to speak for everyone here at CO2 Meter when I say that I swear on the Bible, on the state of Florida Constitution, we all only signed one time. I think it was a huge monumental lift for those folks to get enough signatures, but I think that the testimony that they did it, they got more signatures than they needed to in a shorter amount of time than the state requires, really is a testament to how the citizens of the state of Florida feel about this campaign and what
Hmm.
the end goals of the campaign are.
Absolutely, and it should be easily accessible to everyone. And it's cool that you're able to tap into that market as well, along with everything else that CO2 meter is doing. So the next question that I want to jump into is, are you going to expand your products to detecting other gaseous compounds? Like you were mentioning earlier, you have a project that you'll be working on for that specific one from your customer, but are there other compounds that you're researching now to detect?
Yes, so I think just to piggyback off, I know Josh mentioned it a little bit earlier, but 2024, we definitely have a lot of opportunities. I'm calling 2024 the opportunity year.
Let's go.
Um, just because I think we have such a continued expansion of product solutions that we're going to be able to offer our customers that can really hit into a lot of new markets for us. One being oxygen, the other one being more the industrial side of things, just to better assist some of our customers out there in the field.
Hmm.
Those solutions are definitely going to encompass more multi gas sensing capabilities, not just CO2, but oxygen, carbon monoxide, to name a few.
Mhm.
as well as more industrial enclosures. So some of those customers that are working in more aggressive environments will now be able to have something that fits their environment very nicely. And then paired with the wireless capabilities that Josh mentioned to remotely view those concentrations in real time. There's a lot of new and exciting things coming, not only Q1, but in the middle of 2024 as well. So new
Yeah, no,
advancements, definitely.
Yeah,
that's
Morgan just gave you the whole business preview for 2020. Yeah,
I was gonna say, is he gonna slap my hand? I don't know.
no, no, it's and let me note, Dorian, that Morgan, is a little intentionally coy about these things. Obviously, we don't wanna give people the product roadmap, but I
Right.
will say this, it's not always about the next gas. Sometimes it's about doing what we already do, but doing it better. So, one
Love
example
that.
is we just rolled out a more industrial enclosure for the standard CO2 and O2, monitors.
Mhm.
That's because we got feedback from folks in the cannabis industry, in welding, from gas suppliers, that they needed something that was a little more ding and dent proof. And when I say ding and dent proof, think about, a guy running a full keg into a CO2 monitor
Right.
in a stainless steel enclosure versus a plastic enclosure. So it's not always
Mm.
about the next gas, but it's also about how we see the market. If somebody's already doing, ammonia monitoring really well, then we're probably not going to dive too deep into ammonia monitoring. But if that space is open, if nobody's doing it well, if customers aren't having a great experience with ammonia sensors or ammonia monitors, then that is something we take a look at. So it's not
Yeah.
just necessarily about the next gas, it's about listening to customers. And this is why we call them partners. They're not just customers. If you're going to give us feedback, if you're going to say, could you do this different, or could I have a different relay, or could it measure at a different level? Those people are true partners because we're sharing information, we're in business together. That's also one of the critical components that we've grown over the last 6 to 7 years, especially with Morgan coming on board, is we actually have true partners rather than just churning and burning through customers.
Mm. Yeah, no, I love that. That is good breakdown. And I'm going to give you the hardest
Oh,
question
oh
out of
God.
all of it, just to wrap things up. So, what steps should companies take to start monitoring their carbon footprint?
Oof. I think probably the first thing, Dorian, is they need to take a long, hard look inside their own business. They need to understand and complete essentially what we in this field call a hazard analysis.
Mm.
Is, what do I have? What am I storing? What are its true properties? Take a look at the data sheets for gases. What if I had a device, what should it alarm at? Where am I storing it?
Hmm.
Where is it going to move to if it leaks?
Hmm.
What's its potential for migration? If you don't complete that hazard analysis, essentially you're trying to throw spaghetti up against the wall to see what sticks. So I think the first critical component is someone to dig deep, look with inside their business, complete a hazard analysis. Thank God
Hmm.
there's plenty of those hazard analysis white papers and checklists online, whether it's OSHA or somebody else's.
Right.
But that's definitely the first step to take in understanding, what your true exposure is and what you should be doing. You've got to understand what's going on in your own facility first.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree to that point. I mean, just having the hazard analysis for certain extraction facilities is definitely necessary, and I think a testament to that is like the cannabis industry. I don't think has a complete standard for that quite yet, but I know that with hydrocarbons, that has to be C1D1 lab proof. Otherwise, that's why you have things go boom.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
yeah, so all of this is completely necessary, and I think with just companies in general moving towards the direction of trying to be solventless, CO2 is going to be definitely on the rise as an extraction solvent because it's clean. There's no residual afterwards, and you can recapture it from the atmosphere to be used again as a solvent.
Yeah, the only thing I'm gonna jump in on there, Dorian, is to say this is if someone's using CO2 or plans on using CO2, you have to sit down and have a long, what could be difficult conversation with your CO2 supplier. You need to understand, what does CO2 supply look like for you? What does the CO2 supply look like for them? Is there enough to go around? If there's shortages, if they're forced to put people on force majeures, where do I sit in the pecking order? Am I going to get cut off first, or am I in,
Mhm.
a better position? Understand, do you have enough capacity, and how long that capacity is going, holding capacity? How long is that going to keep you going? Is it going to keep you going a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months? You've got to have a good conversation with your gas supplier. Fortunately, the majority of the folks in the CO2 supply world know every in and out about the gas, where it's coming from, where their supply is coming from, how often do they get supplied, how big a tank could we supply you. They know all those ins and outs. So they should look at that CO2 supplier as a true partner in their business.
Right.
When you do that, they're going to be able to offer you, some maybe some additional equipment. Like, do I need? Hey, do you want telemetry on your tank so that everybody knows where your CO2 level is? Um, they'll be able to recommend somebody to do piping for you. They're the true experts in the field. So I would encourage people to lean on your CO2 supplier for that type of information. Certainly, Morgan, the rest of the team here at CO2 Meter, we're happy to help you find that CO2 supplier or find other equipment suppliers. We're not just here to help you find safety monitors and analytical devices. So it's a full suite of services that we're offering here to help people through all of that.
Nope, it's amazing. I mean, your partners are definitely being taken care of, and you shared a lot of good nuggets there for anyone who's looking to partner up with CO2 Meter and just start to learn just a little bit about what they do, and they'll provide you all the education. With all of that being said, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to come on and talk about everything that we discussed. And it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Dorian. Really appreciate the opportunity, and we look forward to working with you more in the future.
Absolutely. Morgan, thank you also for putting this together. I know we were talking about this for the past couple of weeks and things got tumbled up with COVID, but we're here.
No, thank you so much to Dorian. Like I said, it's nice to see this come full circle, be able to talk with you in your facility and now bringing it back over to us. We love what you're doing out there in the space for the industry and being able to share such great resources. So we're glad that we were able to be a part of it today. So thank you.
Awesome. So until next time, guys, I cannot wait to come back to Florida and we'll actually sit down and hang out sometime.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.
And there you have it. Conversation with CO2 Meter. Thank you for Morgan Morris and Josh Pringle to come on and explain to everyone about their company offerings. If you would like to learn more about CO2 Meter, I will have links in the show notes to find them on LinkedIn and their website. Until next time, don't stop labbing.